Hello, everyone. It's Micah. Welcome to the latest edition of Work in Progress. And one of the biggest parts of this journey I'm on currently, it's a journey I've been on my entire life. To some extent, I've always kind of I've aspired to be the person who does things and knows things and creates content. At one point, I called it being a writer, but I've expanded my definition because I know I can get a little lazy, and that's sort of why I'm doing these videos, to kind of just get some of the stuff in my head out into the world one way or another. But in conjunction with that, and something that's been an ongoing aspiration of mine, I've always wanted to be an avid reader. I remember when, you know, people of my generation know about the whole Pizza Hut summer reading challenges, where you would, sign up with your local library and agree to read so many books. In exchange, you would get coupons for free pizza. And other, very similar programs, and I'm sure there's still programs like that today. I remember one year I read like 80 or 90 books. I did it because I was competitive. I did it because I did like reading, but mainly I am in my head a hoarder of knowledge and information. Now I've softened considerably on that, but still, in the stories that I tell to myself, I'm still this huge intellectual with a voracious appetite for knowledge. In practice, I don't really practice what I preach, or it doesn't fit the narrative. I'll put it that way. I don't go out preaching the gospel of being an intellectual necessarily, although in my head I do. So one thing that a little mini project that I've just embarked upon is creating a reading list for myself and then executing it. And as I was doing some research, I came across a very helpful pre-curated volume. I don't know what's going on with my voice right now. Because I don't edit these videos, I would like to apologize profusely for subjecting you to that intensive throat clearing and the painful explanation that followed it. The complete Harvard anthology of the greatest works of world literature. Catchy, right? So I came across this, and I thought, instead of assembling a reading list, instead of self-curating a reading list, why not just kind of throw myself at the mercy of somebody who's already done this? The other really captivating and or compelling fact about this is that it's a pre-packaged volume. Even more compelling was I found it for 99 cents on the Kindle library, which of course it's obviously a steal. This is no like quick overview of literature that you're meant to do in a one semester course. This is 71 volumes of literature. Some things I think are excerpts, but I think a lot of stuff is actually full texts of different works of literature. And so this will take, even if I'm really diligent, it'll probably take like 5 years to get through this. But it's a preset reading list. It's the same volume, it's the same Kindle book in my library. I just keep scrolling forever through all of these thousands of pages, and it's just, more and more stuff that's, it's been spoon-fed to me as being important. And right off the top of my head, I majored in African American Studies in college, and so I was exposed to a decent amount of Black literature. And right off the top of my head, I've already gone through the 71 volumes, and I think there's not one Black author in the entire set. Now, you would have thought that by this point in the various revisions of this anthology that they would have done something to correct that, but it just struck me that there was literally nothing. It's not like I'm expecting there to be tons of it, but maybe that's why it's 99 cents. Maybe this is a a prior version before they like reassessed what they included or excluded. So I am at the mercy of what people are calling important versus what is important, or what I would personally label as being important. But uh, the way I look at it, if I keep waiting around to assemble one of these lists on my own, is it going to be enough different from this list uh, that it makes a difference? And also, I'm perfectly free to read other books on the side while I'm reading this. So that's a rather long introduction. That's just something that's going on with me. The reason why I wanted to make the video is not to announce that I'm reading this volume, although I will more than likely be making videos as I make my way through about various ideas that come up as I'm reading. Um, as a matter of fact, that is actually what I'm doing today. I'm only a few pages into the very first book. The very first book they chose, obviously this is not a chronological journey through world literature. I think it's more of it's curated in a way that optimizes the connections and themes that you'll encounter as a reader throughout the anthology. I'm interested to see if that unfolds for me in a way that makes sense. But the first volume they chose was the autobiography of Benjamin Franklin, and of course, when just a couple years ago, I listened to an audiobook of the same text. I am going to just follow along and read this, even though I just listened to the audiobook not so long ago. I'm just going to sign up for the whole course, basically. And so it helps to start off with something like that, though, because it's something that I'm already familiar with in broad outline, and maybe I can get some extra insight into the words, because obviously with the audiobook I wasn't just giving my full attention to it the entire time. It was, the audiobook was going while I was doing other things. So I am looking forward to it, and I do find that I really enjoy Benjamin Franklin's prose style. It feels very comfortable to me. Now, obviously, there are some anachronisms or some grammatical constructions which do not really occur anymore in most people's writing. So there's some stuff to get used to, but I'm also concurrently reading Charles Dickens, and I'm really wondering why, how in my childhood I was able to even get through a Charles Dickens novel. Maybe my brain was more agile at the time to be able to wrap my head around his super long sentences and paragraphs. But sometimes I'm just really challenged by okay, wait, what is the subject and verb in this sentence? It just seems like an endless stream of descriptive words that I'm having to try to piece together. So at any rate, I'm still not at my subject for today. And here we are. How far are we in? We are 8 minutes into the video, and you still don't know what I'm talking about. And frankly, not frankly. Frankly, I don't either. Not true. I actually do know what my point is. There was something that came up very early in the book that I wanted to talk about. Benjamin Franklin is very much interested in promoting a certain way of looking at the world and interacting with other people. This is something that he's not being in any way indirect about. He is addressing the reader directly and saying, this is what I think is important. And one of his big things is don't get into arguments with people. Don't be disagreeable. It doesn't really benefit either side. If you are in discourse, and whether this is in writing or in person, your intent is always to pass along information or to provide entertainment or to provide insight, and you're just going to stifle that by being confrontational. And that's not a foreign concept to most of us. I think in some form or another, we've all been exposed to the idea of you play nicely with others. You don't be. It's just part of courteous discourse, and also it does help you take a step back and understand a little better when don't spend the whole time being a contrarian about everything. So not necessarily a radical or unknown concept, but one thing in particular that he brings up, where he's quoting, and I've got it right here. He's quoting Pope, and I'm going to go on a limb and say that's Alexander Pope, who I basically only know as a name. I couldn't really tell you who he was or what he did exactly. This is one of these things I should know because, as I said, I fancy myself an intellectual, but like over the years, things that if you don't use it, you lose it. And so whatever I ever knew about Pope, I no longer know. So anyway, but he quotes Pope as saying, and this is the exact quote, it's in verse, "Men should be taught as if you taught them not, and things unknown proposed as things forgot." The construction is a little odd to modern ears. It's one of those things like Shakespeare where you kind of have to wait, what did he say? But so I'll repeat it. Men should be taught as if you taught them not, and things unknown proposed as if forgot. And the thing that I immediately was struck by when I read this, was how much it's like office culture now. And I wonder if somehow or other there's a direct line between the office culture, that corporate office culture that most people use nowadays, and some of these more philosophical works. Is there any sort of academic backing or scholarly or literary backing to these traditions that we, to some degree, mindlessly do every day? And basically, to rephrase what was said in that verse, try to teach people things. Try to give people information without saying, without saying specifically, well, let me explain to you how this works. Making it very obvious that you are teaching them something. Just say it as if everybody knows it, and if it's new to them, then they can just sort of gather it in discreetly as new information and not call attention to the fact that they're ignorant about it. And then also go a step further, where he says, "Things unknown proposed as things forgot." Oh, you probably forgot about this, but this is we have a meeting at 2:00 today, and this is like at 2:15 as you're waiting around for them for a meeting, and you would DM them, text them, whatever, and say, "Oh, you probably forgot, but we have a meeting. We had a meeting at 2 p.m. today," and they're like, "Oh yeah, I did forget," or the worst case scenario is they never put it on their calendar, or declined the meeting, or erased it by mistake, or in some way did something that was careless or indifferent to the needs of everyone else in the company. And in order to cover for that, the potential of that, it is considered polite to kind of provide an excuse for them. Oh, you must have just forgotten it. So that's my interpretation of this, and that's how I kind of relate it to how things work in my business communication. That comes up a lot, because a lot of times we really are passing along information that other people just don't know. But it's considered impolite to lecture them about it as if as if they're children, or as if they don't know what they're doing in their professional capacity. But to Franklin's point and to Pope's point, what do you really gain except some sort of personal sense of pride that you were able to one up the other party involved? What advantage is there to pointing out this superiority, or pointing out this thing that you knew that they didn't? It doesn't really benefit anybody. It could just potentially antagonize them. So I guess the next question that I have is, has that become such a cliche for how people manage other people that this advice doesn't even fly anymore? I do know that some people just prefer that you speak to them directly. You don't need to make excuses for them. Just give them the information. Some people would definitely prefer that you not go through the whole polite routine of, "Oh, you must have forgotten," or, "Oh, I'm sure you know this, but let's, but just to repeat, just to clarify is one of the great segues into giving people new information, without making it obvious that that's what you're doing. But people at a certain point feel managed when you do that, and so if the attempt is too ham-handed uh, or not believable, like there are certain things that a person might not have any reason to understand. They're not in the same line of business. Uh, like the plumber comes into the doctor's office and the doctor says, well, I'm sure you know this already, but when we're treating this type of illness, it's important that we keep the chemical levels of certain contaminants low, and blah 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 blah. Like, make it, it's something maybe related to what the plumber is there to do, but there's no reason to make that excuse for that person. So, like, why would you go to the trouble of being polite in that way to someone who doesn't have any reason to know what you're trying to tell them you assume they know? Now, so I mean, as in everything, context, social circumstances, historical circumstances and social norms can dictate how these things operate. A full, what are we at, 250 years after Benjamin Franklin wrote these words. So, but it does sort of speak to, like, taking things in their historical context. And I don't know if Benjamin Franklin read some of our inane communications among our business associates in 2026. How would he feel about that? Would he review his advice, and would he change it based on current social circumstances? I don't know, but I think it's really worth thinking about, because if you do manage somebody in that way in a business setting, you do have some pretty good company in attempting to do that. And I just thought it was fascinating that, within my first few pages of engaging on this journey, that I come across something that's very relatable and speaks to what literary analysis really is anyway, which is sort of taking ideas that are presented to you and through the text that you're reading, and kind of applying them to the way you operate in the world, and the way you move through the world, and the way that the people around you, people who aren't around you, but who are contemporary to you, navigate the world. So, one of the reasons I'm not such a reader is because I kind of check out pretty quickly. If it's not relevant, if I don't see the relevance of it, as much as I love writing and I love language, if it's not striking me as relevant, I will tune out pretty quickly. And so, like, fiction is particularly difficult for me because I'm just reading a made-up story. If I wanted to be entertained by a made-up story, I'd watch a TV show. And that's just my honest reaction. I'm not a reader in that way. I don't just rub my hands together and like, ooh, I'm about to get back into this story. A couple years ago, I read I got it for free. There was this trilogy of I forget what it's called. There's a name for this type of literature, but it's set in other worlds. So it's sort of like science fiction. It's sort of like it's like medieval science fiction, and I know there's a term for it. Like, so even though this is happening on a different planet, the conventions and the ways of doing things hearken to our to Earth's history in the Middle Ages. So and there's a very specific and concise term for it, but I cannot think of it right now. At any rate, I read a couple of those novels in that genre, and I could, and I was seeing all the formula story writing that was going into it, and all of the soap opera level intrigue and romance and so forth. And I mean, it was fun. It was okay. It was a good way to pass the time, and it sort of got into my head about, like, okay, how would I do something like this if I ever decide to write some sort of light fiction. But but there was a voice in my head saying, "Why are you wasting your time? Like, this is hours out of your week that you're spending with this story. Uh, that's kind of just this recycled, retold version of any number of uh, legends and myths and sci-fi. This is Star Wars meets King Arthur meets whatever else. These, like what is the real benefit here?" So I tend to get a little antsy and indifferent the act of reading sometimes. So grounding myself in like the relevance of what I'm reading is going to be key to keeping me on track. So just a few thoughts from my first day digging in on this massive anthology. We'll see if I abandon ship within a few days on this and get tired of it, or just move on to something else. But that's what's going on in my world right now. Until next time, this has been the latest episode of Work in Progress.